Greetings, mighty companions, and a Kujawa here, reporting to you live from this holy instant in Miracle Park.
Yeah!
Miracle Park, the sounds of Miracle Park. So, as I always do on Wednesdays, I am teaching from the Course in Miracles, but the complete and annotated edition of A Course in Miracles, which is the latest edition of A Course in Miracles that was put together by the Course in Miracles scholar Robert Perry, who took all of the material that came through the scribe Helen Schuckman that was left out of the first editions, and it's all back into this edition of A Course in Miracles, plus a lot more. So there's so much material that was left out of the first two editions that I really wanted to teach this edition from the beginning, so that I myself could experience the material that I had never heard that was left out of the first two editions. A lot of the stuff that was left out of the first two editions was the stuff about psychology and Freud and philosophy and all those things that I perceive, I guess, that the people who were editing thought that stuff was just for Bill and Helen, since they were psychologists. For me, as a psychologist myself, the material is fascinating and amazing, and was not just for Bill and Helen. It was for all of us. And so that's why I'm doing this edition of A Course in Miracles, starting at the beginning and just making our way through it. And after 4 years, how long it's been, we are now at chapter 5, section 9. Is that right? Section 9. So the Eternal Fixation. Is that right? Section 9? That's it. Okay. So obviously we're speeding through it, and so that's what we're doing. We do A Course in Miracles, the complete and annotated edition. So as we go through this edition, you will hear things that you have never heard in A Course in Miracles before. Things like all about Freud and Jung and philosophy and literature and all kinds of interesting things. Like, for instance, this section right here, and also the previous section. The previous section, not in the two edited versions. This section also, most of it is not in the first two edited editions. It has a lot about Freud and psychology and things like that. So for me, it's fascinating as a psychologist, and also I see why it is that the author put that in there, and so that's what we're gonna do. So lovely to see you, Tricia. Lovely to see you, Kathy. Kathy Hill says, yes, love hearing from this edition. It simply deepens the meaning. Yes, amen. Me too. Absolutely. So I just want to say to you before we begin that A Course in Miracles is all about healing. That is what it's all about. It is not about an exercise in philosophy. A Course in Miracles is all about healing. That's what A Course in Miracles is about. And that's what I am about as a Course in Miracles facilitator. My purpose as a Course in Miracles student and a Course in Miracles facilitator is to hear what A Course in Miracles is saying and apply it to myself for healing purposes, and also to share it with you, that you too might experience the healing power of these ideas. That's what it's all about. So while I am reading to you from these ideas, while I am reading to you, always be listening for, how can this help me right now? How can this help me right now with what I'm going through right now? Because how can I apply it to what I'm going through right now? Because that is what it's all about. Who cares if you have a high IQ, intelligent, and you know a lot, but you're not happy? Who gives a damn? So we've all met a lot of people who were quite intelligent, quite well-read, and we're miserable people. Maybe we've been them. So the Course in Miracles is all healing. So don't get caught in the words. Don't get caught up in the words or the concepts. Always be listening for, how can this help me to have more peace and joy and happiness and abundance and aliveness in my life right now? And if while I'm reading to you from A Course in Miracles, you don't hear how to apply this, how does this apply to what I'm going through, then feel free to ask. I'm going through cancer. I'm going through a divorce. I'm going through homelessness. I'm going through whatever, a depression, anxiety, despair, whatever. Don't hesitate to say, I'm going through whatever. How does this apply to me? Because that's what, to me, this curriculum is all about, and that's what my purpose is as a student of A Course in Miracles and also as a facilitator. So don't get caught up in the concepts and the ideas. Just focus on how can I use this for my own healing. All right, so just get that out of the way. So we are in chapter 5, section 9, and the name of this section is called The Eternal Fixation. The Eternal Fixation. Okay, so we're going to start in paragraph 7. I'm going to skip 6, I know. I'm going to skip, I looked at 6 and whatever. So we're going to start at paragraph 7. And I'm going to give you a very brief synopsis of up to paragraph 7, and then we will start reading from paragraph 7. So the brief synopsis, thank you very much. The brief synopsis is that in this section, the author of A Course in Miracles is going to talk about this psychological concept called fixation. And it's talking, what it's saying about this is that it's referring to what we know as a mindset, or their mind was set on something. It is possible that the mind be set on something. Now, it can either be set on a point of development from the past in your childhood where you didn't get your needs met. In a particular phase of development in childhood, your mind could be set, which means stuck at that place in the past, or your mind can be set on God, something that is eternal. And that the mind can be set on something. And when the mind is set on a point in the past where you were wounded or didn't get your needs met as a child, then your mind will be set in the past. And even though your body is here in the present moment, your mind will be stuck in the past. And we, as psychologists, we know well about that. And what it talks about in the first few paragraphs is that if something happened to you in your childhood during a particular phase of development in your childhood, where you didn't get your needs met in that particular phase of development in childhood, what can happen is that your mind gets fixated at that point where you didn't get your needs met as a child, and here you are living in an adult body in the present moment, but your mind is still in the past trying to get those needs met from childhood. So you seem like you're an adult living in the present, but your mind is stuck and set in the past. Now we all know about that. All right, and that's close. Okay, so it talks about that in the first few paragraphs. It also says that that your mind can be set on something that, it says that when your mind is set on something that is true, when your mind is set on your purpose, when your mind is set on something that is eternal, when your mind is set on truth, an eternal truth, when your mind is set on God. In other words, when your mind is set on a purpose that is eternal and present and true, then then that is a mind that is fulfilling its full potential, its full creative potential. And when something it says about, it says, so I'm going to see if I can find it. When your mind is set on, let's see if I can find it. Da-da-da. It says something about, oh yeah, here we go. All right. It says this. It says that when your mind is set on, it says, goes back, clarity of thought cannot occur under conditions of vacillation. What does that mean? That means unless your mind is fixed in its purpose, your mind isn't clear.
It's not looking for innocence.
Right. Exactly.
Fixated on that purpose.
Exactly.
Then your mind will wander into
Exactly. In other words, exactly. If your mind is not fixed on its purpose, a purpose that is present and eternal and true, then your mind will be vacillating between extremes, love and fear, love and fear, love and fear, chaos and certainty. And so it says, clarity of thought cannot occur under conditions of vacillation, which means unless a mind is fixed in its purpose, the mind is not clear. So, if you are experiencing not clarity, which means if you are experiencing confusion, if you are experiencing extremes of love and then extremes of fear, if you are experiencing confusion, not clarity, then it's because your mind is not fixed in its purpose. So if a mind is not fixed in its purpose, the mind's what? The mind will not be clear. So very powerful thing here. To me, what that means is that when I am experiencing extremes and confusion, it means that I am not fit for my purpose. I have forgotten my purpose. One day my purpose is love, and the next day my purpose is possession. One day my purpose is truth, and the next day my purpose is to get or to defend. One day my purpose is love, and the next day my mind is devoted to fear and defending myself and protecting myself. Okay, that kind of vacillation where one day your mind is here and the next day your mind is here and the next day your mind is here, the next day your mind is there. That is a state of mind where you will only experience confusion, not clarity of thought. So if you are in a state of confusion where you don't, well, what is the truth? One day I'm this and the next day I'm that, and one day I feel this and the next day I feel this, and one day we're here and the next day we're there. That means that there is not what? Your mind is not fixed in its purpose. Okay?
It's not consistent.
Exactly. So if there's a ton of inconsistency and there's a ton of chaos and a ton of confusion, it is because your mind is not fixed in its purpose. So what is the answer? The answer is, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? And then when you bring your mind back to your one purpose, your one goal for your mind, now your mind can experience clarity of thought. Wow. And clarity literally means state of light, and enlightenment is understanding. So understanding and enlightenment come when the mind is fixed on its purpose. So that is something that we need to remember. All right, let me plug my phone in before it dies. Oh, it is plugged in. Great. Okay, wonderful. Okay. All right, beautiful. And then let's see that we're still catching up. All right. Okay. Wonderful. So basically the idea here is that Freud understood that the mind could be fixated on a point in time that is not present, and that that the mind could be stuck in a point in the past where that is gone, where a need wasn't met, there was a wound, and Freud's gift was to bring that to our attention. A Course in Miracles is saying that that the mind could also, if the mind was fixed on something that was eternal, fixed on God, or fixed on an eternal truth, then the mind would be invulnerable. All right. So now we're going to go to paragraph 7. Okay. Any questions or comments relative to the going over what we went over last week? Questions or comments? Okay. Good.
What paragraph are you?
We're going to start paragraph 7 now.
7?
Yes. So we're starting on paragraph 7. Hi, Irene. Hi, Indira. I love you too. You are awesome. Love the music. Wonderful. Thank you, Indira. Lovely to see you. Trisha says, yes, that's where the anxiety comes from. Exactly. So the mind, it's kind of like this. If the mind isn't fixed, here's the idea. The mind can be fixated, meaning the mind can be fixated on the past, or the mind can be fixated on something that's eternally true. The mind has that ability to go, fixated, meaning unwavering. The mind has that ability. Now, if the mind is unwavering, fixated on the past, well, then all that mind is going to experience is confusion and fear and anxiety, depression and despair. It's going to be stuck in the past. But fixation is a concept that's good. The correct interpretation of the idea of fixation is that the mind can shift its fixation and be fixed, stuck, set on something that's eternal. And only when the mind is fixated and set on something that's eternal and true, only then will the mind be calm. Only then will the mind be in its power. A mind that's going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth between two extremes is a mind that is not going to have clarity. It's not going to be a mind that will be in its power to create. So the mind that is in its power is the mind that is set on something that's true and eternal. That's what we're going for. That's what we want. I want a mind that is set on truth, set on something that's eternal, so that no matter what happens, no matter what comes and goes, no matter what happens, our mind is set on something that is true. That is a mind that will have clarity of thought. We want to have a mind that's set in our purpose. That is a mind that will have clarity of thought. And when there's confusion in your thinking, it means that you're not set in your purpose. You're going ding to dong, fear to love, to freedom, to possession, love to fear. When you don't have clarity of thought, it's because you're not set on your purpose. Your mind is going back and forth between two opposites, only one of which is real. So if you have confusion, if you have chaos going on in your life, what I hear here is Anna, just go back to your purpose. What's your purpose? What's your purpose? Forget about everything else. Go back to your purpose. Set your mind on something that's eternal. Forget about, well, what should I do here? What should I do there? Set your mind back on your purpose, and purpose being something that's eternal.
Don't be distracted.
Exactly. What's your purpose? Go back to your purpose. That will bring you clarity of thought. You can't have clarity of thought when your mind isn't set on your purpose. Okay? And of course we have confusion of purpose. Of course we do, especially when you're new to A Course in Miracles. When you come into A Course in Miracles, you're coming in with two purposes. You're like, well, I want to wake up and I want to know my purpose and I want to be about my purpose. But you still have the old purposes that you came in with, which is specialness, power, fame, money, physical pleasure. So when you first come to A Course in Miracles, you are not set in your one purpose of what's the eternal truth. Okay? And so you're not set in your purpose, and so your mind is vacillating. It's vacillating between your old purpose and your new purpose, your old purpose and your new purpose. And so your mind is vacillating, and you don't have clarity of thought, and you have confusion, which then produces anxiety, right? All right. So this section is interesting, the concept of fixation. The mind is very powerful. When the mind fixates on something, it's watch the F out. That's how powerful the mind is. When the mind fixates on something, the mind is powerful. The mind is like the most powerful generator, laser, power plant in the world. The mind is more powerful than any of us have any cons. It's a manifesting power plant. The mind. All that we've manifested as humans on earth, that was humans using 5% of their brain power. Everything the humans have manifested and created, that's 5%, maybe. And so the mind is so powerful. And the mind, when it's focused, fixated, it can manifest whatever it's fixated on. And so Freud got that. Freud's like, well, yeah, the mind can be so fixated on a point in the past where you didn't get your needs met that the mind stays to that point for the rest of that person's life. Or, Freud's gift was to point that out to us. Hey, listen, the mind's so powerful, it can be fixated at a point in the past, and it remains there in the past for the rest of their life. And even though they have an adult body, they're stuck in the past. They never left that past. They never left the oral phase, the phallic phase, the anal phase. They never left that phase. And that's why it's all about the body. The oral phase, phallic phase, anal phase. That's all about the body. 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 And that's where a lot of the addictions come in. And and we're all addicted to something. We're all addicted to something.
Power, fame, physical pleasure, and money.
There you go, and that's all about the body.
All about the body.
Power, fame, money, and physical pleasure is all about the body. And if you didn't get your bodily needs met during those crucial points in childhood, You're going to spend the rest of your life trying to get those needs met that didn't get met in childhood. Whether it's oral, you know this, or phallic, I don't need to go there, or anal, no, I'm not going to go there either. But those were the danger points in the development of the human psyche in childhood that Freud really focused on. Freud was able to go, if the needs didn't get met in the oral phase, and then the mind would be stuck there, and this is how it would manifest in adulthood, and that was his gift. But Freud he says Freud didn't understand that there was other things that the mind could be irrevocably stuck or set on. So, paragraph 7. Although Freud interpreted fixation as a series of irrevocable danger points to which the mind can always regress, the concept of fixation can also be interpreted as an irrevocable call to sanity, which the mind cannot lose. So there's something else going on that Freud didn't perceive that is also going on, that is irrevocable. And there is an irrevocable call to sanity going on. That's the other thing. It says, which the mind cannot lose. The mind cannot lose this irrevocable call. And that's kind of where we left off last week, where there's this call back to sanity. There's this call to come back home. There's this call to come back to who you are. There's this call going on to come back to who you are. And that call is irrevocable. It cannot be revoked. It will never, this call to you from your source, come back home to who you are. Come back home to what you are. Well, that's an irrevocable call. And you can try to not hear it, and you can try to delay your answer, but this is an irrevocable call to sanity, which the mind cannot lose. Wow. It says Freud saw return as a threat to maturity because Freud did not understand prodigality, the prodigal children. Freud didn't understand that. Freud didn't understand that there was this eternal call to come back.
Yeah.
So Freud just thought, you can get stuck. Freud was like, don't go back. Don't go back to the past. You going back to the past is the problem. He didn't understand that there's a call to come back home that's irrevocable, that is good. Okay? Freud is like, don't go back to the past. Don't go back because that is a threat to maturity. Freud didn't get it. So it says Freud merely interpreted that as squandering. If you go back to your past, that's squandering. Yeah, if you go back to the past of your childhood when you didn't get your needs met, that's a squandering. Freud didn't realize that there's a call to go back to something beyond your past, your childhood. Actually, prodigality means careful. This confusion between careful and careless led Freud to confuse the escape from care with something desirable. In fact, Freud even went so far as to equate it literally with desire. So Freud couldn't understand or didn't understand or couldn't accept that there was a call to come back to the care, the overcare of a parent, the spirit parent, that was good. Freud didn't get that part. Freud is like, if you go back to the past to get your needs met relative to childhood, that's bad. Freud didn't understand that there was a call to come back to the care of the spirit parent, God. Freud had this perception like, if you go back to that state of like, I want mommy and daddy to take care of me and meet my needs, he said that's a threat to maturity. The truth is is that there's a call to come back to your parent, to your parental care, to your spirit parent, that is the ultimate, you know. So Course in Miracles is like, come back to your spirit parent. Come back to your spirit parent who cares for you, who takes care of all your needs. Freud had the perception like, don't go back to that. Don't go back to that. Don't go. That's a threat to your maturity. Don't go back to an infantile state where you're like, take care of me, parent. Freud saw that as a threat to maturity. Course in Miracles is like, listen, God, your parent, is calling you to come back to parental care.
I looked up that word.
Prodigality.
Yeah. Before you got to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it says to recklessly and wastefully use spending of money and or resources.
Exactly.
So until you come back, the resource of who you are is being
Wasted.
recklessly,
Exactly.
wastefully used because you're not using your full potential.
Exactly.
Because you're fixated on the past and not able to operate on the present.
Yes, exactly.
So the resources of who you are being
Exactly. So the ego, and also there's another definition of prodigal, and it's called prodigious, and prodigious is a term of abundance, as in God prodigiously supplies for God's creation. And so the ego says this: all dependence is dangerous. So don't go back to dependence. And then the Course in Miracles and the voice of the Course is saying, until you go back to full dependence and you recognize your full dependence on your spirit parent God, you will never know your true abundance and power.
right.
So ego's like, don't go to dependence. Dependence is bad. And then spirit is like, actually, that's where you're being called back to, I am fully dependent on my spirit parent for everything. And wow, look at my life. I lack for nothing. When you are fully dependent on God, your source, for everything, and not persons, places, and things, and events, then you will truly know how wealthy and safe and abundant you really are. While you're still like fighting dependence on God, I don't need God. I don't depend on anybody. I don't need anybody. I take care of myself. While you're still in that state of mind, you will never know the wealthy, abundant inheritance that is yours. And of course, in Miracles is like, so Freud was like, don't go back to the infantile state of mommy, daddy, blah, 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 meet my needs. Freud's saying, don't go back to that state. Of course, in Miracles is like, come back to your relationship with your spirit parent who meets all your needs. So Freud was like baby steps toward it, and then, because of Freud's fear, then Freud didn't get all the way there. And that's all right. Now, you can see why the whoever it was that was editing the first two editions of A Course in Miracles left this out. Because in my perception, from what I understand, the people who were editing the Course in Miracles at the beginning thought that because the author was talking about Freud and psychology and regression and all the psychological things, that the author of the Course must have been only talking to Bill and Helen, who were psychologists. And I think that's why they took that psychological stuff around Freud and Jung out. Whereas to me, I see that is absolutely 100% for all of us as well.
Amen.
Yeah. So it says, paragraph 8, but throughout Freud's thought system, the so-called threat of fixation remained and could never be completely eliminated by any living human being anywhere, says Freud. You can't eliminate the threat of fixation. So Freud saw fixation as a threat. A Course in Miracles is seeing fixation as your salvation. The Course in Miracles is saying, unless you fixated on something eternal, it ain't going to end well. So Freud is like, fixation is the problem. And Course in Miracles is like, actually, fixation is a good thing. Just like everything the ego makes, that the Holy Spirit can retranslate to something that is good for you and can help you. So now the Holy Spirit is like, hey, fixation, that's fine. If you fixated on something that's eternal, then your mind's going to have clarity of thought. And when your mind has clarity of thought, what does your mind have? Power. What makes for power? What makes a mind be powerful? It's focused. When is it that you're able to create the most? Your mind is focused. Focused. When the mind is focused, the mind is in its power. Now, if the mind is focused on something that's not real, like the past, then the mind will be fixated and stuck in something, in bad patterns, unhappiness. But if the mind is fixated on something that's eternal and real, then the mind for real can release its creative power. So to me, the answer always is, go back to your purpose. Put your focus on your purpose. For everything else, forget about, this happened, this happened, I don't know what to do about this, and drama. Forget about it. Put your mind back and fix your mind on your purpose and forget about everything else. And that will restore clarity of your mind, clarity of thought. And you'll be like, I know what I am. I know what I'm doing. And now I have clarity of thought and I'm not confused. And I'm in my power. So that's the practical application of that in my perception. Okay? If you're experiencing weakness or confusion, or upset, it's because your mind isn't fixated on your purpose, something that's eternal. And so your mind is confused, your mind is vacillating, which a mind that's vacillating is not a mind in its power. All right. So it says, essentially, this was the basis of Freud's pessimism. This was personally as well as theoretically the case for Freud. Freud, in other words, tried every means his very inventive mind could devise to set up a form of therapy which could enable the mind to escape from fixation forever. So Freud's like, let's fix that. Freud was going for the escape from fixation forever, even though Freud knew this was impossible. Wow. So didn't understand that actually fixation, being set on something, was really the answer. Freud thought that was the problem. The mind is fixed and set in the past. That's the problem. Freud didn't understand that the mind being set and fixed on something was the answer. He didn't understand that. The knowledge plagued Freud's belief in his own thought system at every turn, because Freud was both an honest man and a healer. So Freud was like, so it plagued him. This concept of fixation plagued him. Why? Because he really was an honest man and a healer. He really wanted to help. He really wanted to heal people, honestly speaking. But this one concept really he didn't get, and so it plagued him. It's because he didn't have an understanding about that there was something eternal. Freud was told by his guides that there was something eternal that the mind was eternally drawn to. He was told that, but he couldn't accept that. And so he had all this conflict that plagued him. So what he didn't get was that there was something that really was an eternal fixation that was always eternally calling the mind back. Freud thought anything that's calling the mind back was bad, a threat to maturity, not realizing that there was something that was irrevocably calling the mind back that wasn't bad, that was good. And that's called God. That's what was irrevocably calling the mind back to something that was way before any of the childhood wounding. Yes. Freud didn't know that, but he was told that, but he resisted that. That's what it said in earlier sections, that Freud was given that. Freud was very ingenious, and Freud was told that, but he didn't accept it. Okay. All right. So the good news is that there is something that is irrevocably calling us back. Not back to the childhood where we didn't get our needs, but it's irrevocably calling us back to the care, the overcare, the overcare of your spirit, parent, mother, father, God, where all your needs are met. All your needs are met in God. God's like, come home. I home. I take care of everything. Come home. I'll take care of everything. All your needs, all your wants, all your desires. Come on back home. Freud saw that as a problem, like returning to infancy. So that's what we're being called. We are the prodigal children, who are like, I gotta make it on my own. I don't need anybody. I'm doing it myself. I don't need anybody. That's the prodigal children. I do it myself. And then always upset and always broken and always broke and always not enough because we're trying to take care of myself. And A Course in Miracles is saying that God is irrevocably always calling us back home to God's care where we need do nothing. And we're like, no, that's dependency. I don't want dependency. I'm trying to get away from codependency. I'm trying to get away from that. I don't want to be codependent. And God's like, you might want to be dependent on me. Yeah. Like, how's that working out for you? How's that working out for you? Trying to meet all your own needs.
And you're not going to follow your own plan, but God's, then why would you follow somebody else's plan?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
The Course in Miracles says, unless and until you recognize your complete dependency on God, you will never know your real safety and your real abundance. Here we are like, and I don't want dependency is bad. The ego interprets all dependency as bad.
Yes.
Course in Miracles is like, unless you recognize your complete dependency on God, then you're going to feel broken, unsatisfied, unhappy for forever. So So Freud saw dependency and return to the past and infantile state as bad, and fixation on the past is bad. And of course, in Miracles is saying fixation is good when your fixation is on God, your purpose, God, and that fixation is good, and it will provide everything that you didn't get in childhood. So it's like whatever you didn't get in childhood, you know, in your all the oral, anal, and phallic phase, whatever you didn't get in childhood, your spirit parent is offering you now. If you'll just come home, prodigal children, come home. Don't be ashamed to come home. It doesn't mean you're regressing. Coming home doesn't mean regression. Coming home is what you are, it means success. So Freud said regression was bad. Of Course in Miracles is like regression. Yeah, regression is good if you're going back home to your true spirit parent. So it doesn't matter what kind of childhood you had and what kind of deprivation you experienced in childhood. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because all of those needs can be met right now by going home to God, your true spirit parent, and being dependent on God. Not yourself, not your ego, not others, not the world, not money, power, fame, but you go home and you be dependent on God, your spirit parent. And when you do that, then all those needs are met, and now you have a life that looks exactly like as if you had had every single need of yours met in childhood. How about that? How would you like to have a life where when people look at your life, they're like, my God, you must have had the perfect childhood. Look at you. Look at your life. And you're like, no, I didn't have the perfect childhood at all.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you look like you did. No, I didn't have the perfect childhood at all. But I allowed myself to be reparented. All those wounds and all those needs that didn't get met in childhood, I took them to my real parent, my spirit parent, God. And they all got met plus something. And now I have a life that looks like I had the perfect childhood where all my needs got met. How about that? How's that sound? That's the kind of life I would like to have. The kind of life where it looks like I had the perfect childhood where all my needs were met. You know, and you can have that if you will come back home, and also if you will fixate your mind not on the past but on your source right now. Fix your mind, set your mind on God. So there was a quote from the Bible at the beginning of this section that I'm going to read to you. Yay, says Greg. All right. So here's the quote from the Bible. I don't know whether it's Old Testament or New Testament. Maybe Greg could tell us. Here it is. It goes like this. Thou wilt keep you in perfect peace whose mind is set on thee. So in other words, whose mind is set or fixated on God is someone who will be kept in perfect peace. So, whose mind is set on God, whose mind is set on God, that is the one who will be kept in perfect peace. So, whose mind is fixated on God is the one who will be in perfect peace. Okay? The one whose mind is fixated in the past, where they didn't get their needs met, whether it was childhood or last week, that's somebody who will not be in peace. It's only the one whose mind is set or fixated on God, which is the eternal love. That is the one who will be kept in peace.
One of Christ's favorite prophets to quote from the Old Testament, Isaiah. Is what that is.
Oh, Isaiah. It's Isaiah.
26:3.
It's Isaiah.
You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast
Yes.
because they trust in you.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So I guess what it's saying here, what I'm hearing now, is that the mind fixates. The mind is so powerful that when the mind focuses on something, out. The mind is like a laser. When the mind focuses on something, it's fixed. The mind is fixed. And when the mind is fixed on something that is eternal, then that fixation absolutely provides everything. Everything. When the mind is fixed on the past, what I didn't get, whether that's your childhood or last week. And that's our temptation. It's like, what is it that my mind's fixated on? Well, who didn't meet my needs? And then that last relationship, they didn't meet my needs. And my parents, they didn't meet my needs. And then that situation, that job, they did not meet my needs. And the mind wants to fixate on that in the past where your needs didn't get met. Thinking that if your mind just fixates on that it will somehow get its needs met. And so this is reminding us that there's another fixation for your mind that is incredibly helpful and that will literally meet all your needs. Wow. Okay. All right. So that was just going back to the first thing. So Tricia says, give me some of that. Right on, Tricia. Monica says, it's never too late for our adult children whom we didn't parent well? Question. Yes. I think that's a question. And yes, that is, the answer is yes. It's never too late to have a happy childhood. It's never too late to have all those needs met. And it's never too late for your children who maybe you didn't, what you say, parent well. It's never too late for them to experience all their needs being met if their mind is fixated not on the past, but on the eternal truth that is available for all of us right now, called love, called God. Okay. And Demi says, exactly. Take responsibility and redirect needs to our higher power for perfect peace. Exactly. Beautiful. Wow. Very interesting. All of this, most of this section so far is not in the first two edited editions at all. This section and the one previous. Isn't that interesting? That's why I'm doing this book. All right. It says now, okay, It says, I think we finished, we're in the middle of paragraph 8. The knowledge plagued Freud's belief in his own thought system at every turn, because Freud was both an honest man and a healer. Freud was therefore only partially insane at the perceptual level, which means Freud was unable to relinquish the hope of release, even though he could not cope with the hope of release. Wow. So Freud he was unable to relinquish the hope of release from whatever happened in the past, although Freud couldn't cope with the idea that you can have release from the past. Isn't that interesting? Freud wanted the idea that somehow you could be released from your past even though you didn't get your needs met. But he couldn't cope with the idea of being released from the past. So, like in Freud's thought system, basically in traditional psychology, you can't be released from your past. Whatever happened to you between birth and 3 years, sorry, you cannot be released by that. Just sorry. You can try to cope with it, but you cannot be released with what happened to you between birth and 3 years. No, but yeah. So in other words, whatever happened to you in the past, you're not going to be released from it. You're going to be fixated. You'll be stuck there. Whatever happened to you in your infancy. That's so depressing. And Freud was obviously depressed. As evidenced by his drug addiction to cocaine and, everything that comes with that. Right? So Freud wanted the idea that you could somehow be released from your past, but he couldn't cope with the idea that, you can be released from your past because there's an eternal present you can tune into and get all your needs met now. And then some. He couldn't cope with that. Wow. So hallelujah, you are not stuck. You can be released from your past. You're not stuck there. You're not stuck in whatever happened in your past. You can experience complete release from the past right now, if you want that. And just because Freud couldn't cope with that idea doesn't mean you can't. Doesn't mean you can't experience that. All right. And then came along Jung after Freud. Jung was Freud's protege, and Jung was the one who was like, there's something besides your past that you could tap into. Mm-hmm. And then that's why Freud and Jung had a break. And it was a very painful break. I read a biography. I read a biography one time about Jung and Freud, and it was Freud was Jung's mentor and his teacher. And Jung was the one who's like, you could be released from the past by tapping into an eternal present that we all collectively share. And Freud was like, oh no, you can't. And so Jung and Freud had a break. So imagine teacher and student have this divorce, basically. It was such a painful divorce for Jung that Jung had a nervous breakdown. And where he had to literally go deep to handle this nervous breakdown that he had when he had this break from his mentor, his teacher. You feel like you're rejected by your father, and so Jung then used basically play therapy. That's where you play therapy, which I am a play therapist. It ultimately came from Jung. Jung, who was going through this nervous breakdown, the way he would handle his psychic stress was every day he would go out. He lived on the shore of a river. He would go out and he would go and play in the sand, and he would do sand castles and sand villages and sand. He played in the sand and the water, and he played and made villages and made this and he played in the sand. And he had a psychic healing, and he realized that the psyche can heal itself if you allow the psyche to play. And then that was actually the beginnings of play therapy, which then I learned how to do. So you can heal the psyche not by going back to the past and trying to fix the past, but being present. What's happening when you're playing? You're being present. When you're playing, you're being spontaneous. Play is spontaneous. Play is not like, and now we're going to do like this from the past. Play is when you're being spontaneous, like when you were sliding down the hallway, spontaneous. And so when you're not stuck in the past, trying to fix the past, or overcome the past, or make up for the past, or try to get what you didn't get in the past, but you're being present. What's happening now? You know, play, healing happens. You get your needs met. In all, whatever needs you didn't get met from the past, they get met in the present, and that is healing. That's what I learned as a play therapist for children. You know, I didn't take those children back to what happened to them in the past. I was just like, what can we create right now in the sandbox? We got dinosaurs, we got trees, we got rocks. I used to bring all my crystals into the playroom, you know, a big sandbox and and puppets, and well, what are we gonna do now? Let's play now. And then they would have healing. So that's just a little side note as a play therapist, psychologist. Beautiful. And hi, Patty. Lovely to see you, my dear. And Monica says, thank you for sharing this about Jung and Freud. I was in therapy for 5 years, but never got to healing.
Yeah.
Right on. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Monica. Yeah, exactly. All right. So how are we doing on time? Okay, good. All right. So if you're confused and you're anxious and you don't know what to do, play. Right on, girl. Play. And there's many. Play means anything spontaneous. Okay, whatever that is for you, whether that's dancing or art or singing or hiking or exploring caves or whatever. That's what, you know, when you're being spontaneous, you are being in the moment, which means you are accessing something that is eternal. When you're being in the moment, that's where you're accessing what's eternal. And what's eternal is the love that you think you didn't get from your past. When you're being present, you're accessing the eternal. What's eternal is love, joy, and peace that you think you were deprived of in the past. So, don't need to go back for healing. All you need to do is be present to what is so right now and be fixated on the eternal, which is the same thing as being fixated on now, right now. Beautiful. Patty says, hello, hello. As adults, we can do play therapy too. Absolutely. There are so many times when adults would come into my office and they were fixated on the past. Absolutely. Like fixated on the past. And I was like, okay. Thank you for sharing what happened to you in the past. How about you get down on the floor with me right now? We're going to play in the sandbox. And they're like, I don't do that. Okay, but, you know, how about now? Would you be willing? Okay. And so I have them come out of the couch, out of the chair, and onto the floor. And, you know, now they're playing in the sandbox. And then, boom, shift happens. So, all right. Okay, so here we go. Now we're in paragraph 9. The reason for this amount of detail, psychology, Freud, Jung, blah, blah, blah. The reason for this amount of detail is because you are in the same position as Freud. You were eternally fixated on God in your creation, and the pull of this fixation is so strong that you will never overcome it. Dang. What is it going on here? The pull of this fixation of God is so strong that you will never overcome it. And the reason you'll never overcome the pull of God on you is because the reason is perfectly clear. The fixation is on a level which is so high that it cannot be surmounted. What does that mean? That means you are always being pulled back to your Creator because you belong in your Creator. And you will never overcome that fixation. You will never overcome that pull. And you can try for lifetime after lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. I will not be pulled back to God. I don't need God. I'm doing fine myself. I don't need God. Only weak people need God. I'm doing fine. Have you noticed? I have all this power, fame, money, and physical pleasure. I don't need God. Only weak people are dependent on God. Only weak people need God.
God needs me. I have it figured out.
Exactly. God needs me. I don't need God.
I have great plans.
I have lots of great plans. I've got it all figured out. I know exactly what I'm doing, and I do not need God. Dependency is weak. I mentioned, my family member who's uber successful in the world. This person is brilliant, beautiful, successful, like they are the epitome of success in the world.
Baby,
Brilliant, beautiful. Oh, sorry, honey. Sorry about talking about you.
Oh, okay.
And he told me, he says, I don't really need God. I'm doing fine myself. And I absolutely could not with him. I'm like, yeah, you are. You are really doing great yourself. I couldn't argue with him, but what he doesn't understand is that the pull of God, and so he at the moment he said he was an atheist. Later he's like, no, I'm agnostic. But what he doesn't understand is that pull from his source, his Creator, is so strong that he will never overcome it. So eventually, whether it's this lifetime or what next, then he'll be like, I can't resist it any longer. I can't resist it any longer. I can't resist it any longer. There's something pulling me back to my creation. There's something pulling me back beyond, all that I've done for myself. So now, you will never overcome God's pull on you where you just go, woo, I surrender. Oh my God, the ultimate ecstasy. The ultimate ecstasy is when you surrender to the eternal fixation. That's the ultimate that's the ultimate ecstasy. When you go, yes, and the Course in Miracles says that all strain comes from trying to resist the inevitable. So any strain you feel in your life, anywhere you're exhausted is where you're straining. That's where you're exhausted. And all strain comes from trying to resist the eternal pull back to your source that created you, that loves you, that made you. That's where all strain really comes from. And then all true ecstasy comes from the surrendering to the inevitable, the inexorable pull, the eternal fixation that your Creator has on you. It's the eternal gravity that you'll never break. But in all your attempts to break that pull, I will not be pulled. You will not have me. Do it myself. Do it myself, my own way. That's you like straining. But when you go, hey, thy will be done. Thy will and my will are one. What you want from me, that's what I want. That's when you're like, whoo, whew, that's when all strain is gone and you start floating on the currents of life. And you're like, wow, you're just floating and it's carrying you into heaven, you know, where you're literally floating on the currents of God's love and support. And life feels like you're being carried, you know, through life, where you're like floating, being carried, you know. How nice is that? You're not like having to figure out how to survive, how to make it, how to do something. Oh, such a strain. I don't know. I figured I could do it myself. You know, how nice to just, thy will be done. I'm yours. You know, I came from you. I'm going back to you. So have your way. That's the ultimate experience of happiness and love and joy, which is the opposite of strain. Wow. All right. Then you can see now what it was saying about Freud was like, Freud was being told about that, but Freud resisted, and ultimately, you know, had an unhappy ending because he resisted the eternal fixation, the eternal pull. He thought anything that's pulling you back is bad, you know, and in truth, you are being pulled back, not to your childhood, but back to your spirit parent who, you know, meets all your needs plus a million cajillion. So, it says you are always being pulled back to your Creator because you belong in your Creator. That's where you belong. Wow, I belong in my Creator. Wow. Dang. And that's what we all are seeking unconsciously. We're all seeking to belong. That's been kind of the theme, you know, with us in the last week. It's like I was seeing how everybody is looking for where everybody's seeking for someplace to belong. Everybody's seeking for someplace to belong to, or a family to belong to. Everybody's seeking a place or a family or group to belong to, whether that's, you know, a spiritual community or a gang or a relationship or a party affiliation or whatever. We're all unconsciously seeking where we belong. We're all looking for belonging, you know, and what we are missing is that we belong in God. And that once we accept that we belong in God, then that craving for belonging is satisfied. So now we're not going to sacrifice ourselves to a relationship just so that we can feel like we belong. We're not going to sacrifice ourselves to a cult just so we can feel like we belong. We're not going to sacrifice ourselves to this family that doesn't recognize us just so we can belong. You know, we're all being called back to that which we belong in, called God. And you're not going to find it in anything but God. You're not, that feeling of wanting to belong is not going to be satisfied with anything besides God. Not a gang, not a relationship, not a family, not a party affiliation, nothing. But that's what we're all wanting. And that, to me, I was seeing that tonight while I was getting ready for class. I was like, oh, that's the theme around all the, like, you know, spiritual stuff and the cults and all that we've been, you know, learning about this last week. I was like, oh, that's it. All right, how we doing? Okay, how are you guys doing? Demi says Sigmund Freud had a, check this out. Okay, all right, Demi, I'm gonna read this to everybody present here. Okay, y'all, I'm reading this to you. Okay, all right, you guys? Okay, this is Demi. Demi lives in New York. Demi says Sigmund Freud had a branded outlook on humanity. Wow. Ego fixation and period. Playing gives the brain a break, permission to get lost, I think is what it's saying. Wow. Right on, Demi. Very perceptive.
Cool beans.
Very perceptive,
Perfect.
Demi.
Cool beans.
Demi, I can't even tell you right now how perfect is what you said for us
don't
here
even
at
know.
Miracle Park. You don't even know. You don't even know.
We're still waiting
But
for
someday we'll tell you,
Way to
Demi.
use
And when you
your
get to Miracle
body
Park,
as a
Demi, we'll tell you
communication device.
how unbelievably psychic your
Yes.
comment is. All right. Wow. So I'm going to say it again. Sigmund Freud had a branded outlook on humanity. Ego fixation. Branded ego fixation.
That's ego.
Branded ego fixation. Shh. You're branded by your past. You're branded by your past. You will not escape your past. You're branded by your past.
branded by your faults.
Yeah. Wow. Being fixated on the past or by the past is like having a brand on you that you can never get rid of. Exactly. And that's a tattoo. All right. Okay. So now, paragraph 10. Do you really believe you can make a voice which can drown out God's voice? Really? Really? Do you really believe you can devise a thought system which can separate you from God's thought system? Really? Really? Do you really believe that you can plan for your safety and joy better than God can? Really? Well, you need be neither careful nor careless. Okay? I don't need to be careful or careless. Well, what do I need to be? You need merely cast all your cares upon God, because God cares for you. Wow. So don't worry about being too careful or too careless. Don't worry about any of that. Just all you need to do is cast your cares upon the one who cares for you. Wow. I'm always anxious about, I need to be careful, or I'm being too careless, I'm being careless. You know, anxiety around that. Totally can relate to all the anxiety around that. You know, I gotta be careful. Oh, I'm being too careless. Oh no. Don't worry about that. Whatever your cares are, that's all you need to do is cast them upon God who cares for you. Because God cares for you. That's all you need to do. Why? Because you are God's care. You know why you're God's care? Because God loves you. And that's why God's voice reminds you always that all hope is yours because of God's care for you. So be hopeful, because your Creator cares for you. Your Creator loves you. And so you have no reason to be anything but hopeful, no matter what happens. Whether this works out, whether this doesn't work out, whether this doesn't work out, whether that works out, it doesn't matter. You can be hopeful. Like, I don't know what the hell is going to happen. I don't know how it's going to go, but I'm hopeful because I know my Creator cares for me. So however it's going to go, it's going to be good because my Creator cares for me. And so I have every reason to be full of hope instead of anxious, depressed, and afraid and hiding under the table. Wow. It don't matter how it goes. It don't matter how it goes at all. Whether this happens or that doesn't happen or don't matter. It says all hope is yours because of your Creator's care for you. That is so beautiful. We could literally, from this point forward, be only full of hope instead of terror about how it's gonna go. I'm so scared because it could go this way. And I'm so afraid because it could go that way. Well, it don't matter how it goes because it does, because God's care for you is eternal and unconditional. Wow. And it says, in other words, you cannot choose to escape God's care. No matter how much you try, and we know you're trying, you're very ingenious, you're very creative, very persistent, and you still cannot choose to escape God's care for you. No matter how ingenious you try to do it. Well, I know this will make God really mad. This will really offend God. I'm pretty sure of it. I'm sure that if I do this, that God will at the very least ignore me for a long time. If not, it's like judge me and send me to hell. He's saying you cannot make up anything where you could escape God's care. You can't do anything that would make God say, I don't care about you anymore. You couldn't. You can't. You cannot escape God's care. We're trying to escape God's care. We're like, oh, this'll do it. No, this'll do it. No, this'll do it. We're trying to escape God's care. Have you ever tried to help somebody? You were like, I want to help you. And they were like, get away from me. Like, I just tried to help you. And you're like, get away from me. You're like, they're trying to escape your care. You know, like little kids. You know, you're trying to help them. We're a puppy. And they're like trying to escape your care. That's us. Trying to escape God's care. And he goes, you can't. I'm sorry, but you can't escape God's care. Says, because it's not God's will that you escape God's care. That's not what God wants to be. And so it's not going to happen. It's not God's will that you not have his care. And so it can't happen. Wow. So you can't escape God's care because that's not God's will that you escape his care, but you can choose to accept God's care, and you can choose to use the infinite power of God's care for all of those God created by his care. Wow. So those are your options. Those are your options. You cannot escape God's care, but you can accept God's care and use the infinite power of God's care for all those folks, all those beings that God created by his care. So those are your two options. You can try to escape his care and that not work, or you can go, okay, I accept your care. Okay, all right, fine. I accept that you care for me, God. And when you accept God's care, then you are accepting you'll be able to use the infinite power of God's care for all those God created by his care. Wow. Dang. Can you imagine accepting the infinite power of God's care and using it for God's children, God's creations? That's not just any regular old power. That's infinite power. What has infinite power? God's care for God's creations. Would you like to have infinite power? All right. Exactly. Yes. Admit it. You know you want some infinite power. Admit it. This is the way to have unlimited power. Dang. You mean even more than Superman? What about Batman? What about Aquaman? You mean like infinite power? You can accept, and you can, if you accept God's care, then you'll be able to use the infinite power of God's care. Wow. So if you want some infinite power, then accept God's care for you, and decide that you would like to use God's care and the power of it to help others. I want to help others. I want to take the care you have for us, and I want to use it to help others. Really, is that your purpose? Well, then you are accessing infinite power. Wow. And that's exactly what Greg and I have been learning and experiencing. It's like, Greg and I don't know what we're doing, but we say we want to help. We want to take your love and we want to extend your love to those you created. And like, that's our purpose. And having no idea what we're doing, and then all of a sudden, there's manifestations of infinite power. Whatever we need shows up whenever we need it. Whenever we need it, whatever it is, whenever we need it. In other words, if you will accept God's care, then you'll be able to use the infinite power of care for those God created by God's care. So that's so incredible. We don't have to know anything. I don't have to know how to do anything at all. And I can access infinite power. Wow, that's deep. So that takes us back to what I was talking about, your purpose. Your mind is fixed on your purpose. Your mind has clarity of thought. And not only that, but if you're fixed on the purpose of caring for those whom God has created, then you don't only have clarity of thought, but you have infinite power. Which means whatever you need to do, whenever you need to do it, is going to be there for you. Like magic, but it's really miraculous. Whew. Okie dokie. And that's the end of that section. The end. The end, boys and girls. That's the end of your bedtime story for tonight.
Thanks, Mama.
You're welcome. You did a good job listening.
Thanks, Mom.
You're welcome. Wow. That's such cool stuff about playing and care, coming home, coming home to your spirit parent who is like, just come on back. I don't care what you did. It used the word prodigal, prodigious, prodigality. What do you say? Yeah, coming back home. We're all, it's like, not only are we all being called back home, but there is a pull back to God, back to love, back to something that cares for you infinitely, that you can't resist forever. You can try. And you can try for lifetime after lifetime after lifetime and experience the strain of saying no to that pull and experiencing all the symptoms of that strain, like sickness and fatigue and depression and despair. You can do that as long as you want. Really, you are free and you are innocent. Or you could just say, okay, I say yes. I say yes to your pull. I'll come home. I'll come home. Okay, I accept your care. I'll come home and accept your care for me. Your care, your infinite care. So, those are your options. And awesome. Monica says, this is awesome tonight. Loving this. Right on, Monica. Thank you. Bridget says, it's all working together for our good. Yes, it is. Demi says, hit the lottery with infinite power versus choosing poverty mentality. Your pick. Right on, Demi. You're a great, you guys are great teachers. Awesome. I love it.
Great channelers.
Yeah, you all
They're
are
using
so
their body
amazing.
Correctly.
Absolutely. You guys are just incredible. I love it. Beautiful. So thank you guys for being such good teachers for me. The Course in Miracles says the joy of the teacher is in the students who then give back to the teacher what the students heard, which enables the teacher to get it. So who's really the teacher and who's really the student in this process, honestly? So thank you for being such amazing teachers for me. I really appreciate it and I really need it. So, okay, so that's the end of that section. So next Wednesday, we're going to start with last section of chapter 5. Wow, incredible. I've been on chapter 5, I don't know, it seems like years. Doesn't it? It seems like years. Maybe it has been a year that I've been on chapter 5. So we're doing the last section for chapter 5 called The Decision for God. Okay, wow. So it makes sense that that's the next section. So that's what we're going to do next week. And that sounds awesome. So I'm going to do announcements, and then we're going to do the integration meditation. It's 2 minutes after 8:30, so if you need to check out, then you're totally innocent. Awesome. And if you would like to help this message to go out to humanity, then feel free to post it on your Facebook feed or whatever you call that. And also, if you'd like to listen to some other classes of mine over the years, go to my YouTube channel, Anna Kujawa, Kujawa, and you can partake of classes from last few years. So, wonderful. Announcements are I do 2 live streams a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, 7 to 8:30 p.m. Mountain Time. And on Mondays, we do random number generator Miracle Roulette. And on Wednesdays, we do the annotated edition of A Course in Miracles. It may be that my time at the Miracle Center has come to a close for this season due to the winter and COVID lockdown. So just so those of you who have been coming to the Miracle Center, I may be going back online on Mondays to hear from Miracle Park. I'm a holistic psychotherapist, and if you would like a one-on-one Miracle Psychotherapeutic session with me, where we take these ideas and apply them to what you are going through to unleash the infinite power of God's care for you, then I'm available for that. I'm in person if you're around here, or phone or Skype. So I'm available for that. The best way to reach me is either to private message me on Messenger or to go to my website, annakujawa.com, find my phone number and text me. That's the best way to reach me always, is texting. All right. And then Greg does a beautiful class on Tuesdays here from Miracle Park, where he does a beautiful synthesis of A Course in Miracles in the Bible. Very powerful. 7 to 8:30 p.m. Mountain Time. Yeah, we're about to go to Mountain Standard Time next week. So awesome. Okay, there we go. So those are announcements, and now we are going to do integration meditation, where we just breathe and listen to the music and feel what the ideas feel like and actually use them. So I want you to just close your eyes and take a breath and just rest. Rest your mind, rest your body. Feel what these ideas feel like in your mind, in your heart, in your emotions, and even in your body. When you hear these ideas, what does it feel like? Beautiful. All right. So I want you to bring to your awareness a situation in which there is strain or conflict. Whether it's an event, a relationship, a situation where you got a lot of cares, feeling anxious about being careful or too careless. Maybe a situation where you feel like maybe you've squandered something. A situation maybe where you feel confused. And I want you to hear what our teacher says to us about you. And our teacher says, you need not be careful or careless. You need but cast your cares upon the one who cares for you. So go ahead and do that. Cast your cares upon the one who cares for you. Infinite care. Infinite patience for you. Infinite care for you. And then I want you to tell yours something that maybe yours, that we heard, that maybe you haven't been telling yourself. I want you to tell yourself, I am God's care because God loves me. And tell yourself that even if you don't believe it. We know you don't believe it. I am God's care because God loves me. And then I want you to see if you can hear God's voice reminding you always that all hope is yours because of God's care. Tell yourself, all hope is mine because of God's care. I have every reason to be hopeful right now. Completely hopeful because of God's care for me. Regardless of what happens, regardless of what happens after this moment, it does not matter. All hope is mine because of God's care for me. So no matter what happens, my Creator's care for me will care for me, will take care of me. I do not need to be afraid of what might happen in the future. I do not need to be afraid of what might happen in this situation or this relationship. I'm hopeful because I know my Creator cares for me. I can't escape my Creator's care even if I tried. And boy, have I tried. Boy, have I tried. And I want you to tell yourself, but I can, what I can do is I can choose to accept God's care and use the infinite power of God's care for all of those God created by His care. So let's say to ourselves silently, I choose to accept God's care. God, I choose to accept your care. I choose to accept your care, God. I choose to accept your care, God. I choose to accept your care, God. And I choose to use the infinite power of your care for all those you created by your care. That's what I'm choosing in this holy instant, even though I have no idea what that means at all. You said I can do it, so I'm doing it. I choose to accept your care for me, God. Even though I have tried to not accept your care for so long, in so many ways, who cares? I choose to accept your care for me now. And I also choose to use the infinite power of your care for all those you send my way, those whom you created by your care. Thy will be done. You want to care for me? I want your care. Your will and my will are one. Thy will be done. You want to care for me? I want your care. Our will is one. Thy will be done. I accept your care, God. I accept your care. And I will use the infinite power of your care for all those you send my way. And just breathe that in. Beautiful. Be you in charge. All right. Way to love yourself, everybody. Way to love yourself, everybody here at the park. And way to love yourself. Hearing some loving things about yourself. You deserve it. You deserve the care of your Creator. I appreciate you so much, more than I can say. And I'll see you next time I see you.